So a very good evening to everyone and welcome to today's weekly career class, which is on the topic career in consulting. And I am very glad to introduce to you all today's speaker, Mr. Ashish Lal, who is a senior consultant. Currently, Mr. Ashish is the Associate Director, Process Improvement at Novartis. And in the past, he has worked at renowned companies such as HSBC, Genpact, and EXL. His specialities, which he'll be talking about more in a while, include business process reengineering, change management, and process excellence. So welcome, Mr. Ashish, and it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Right. So we'll dive just into it now, and I'll be asking Mr. Ashish a couple of questions, and he also has a presentation ready with him, and I'm sure it's going to help all of you for those who are interested in this domain. So, Mr. Ashish, why don't you start by telling us about your educational and professional journey?
So, are we recording this session for later use?
Yes, yes.
Because I see recording paused.
So it's on live. So.
Oh. Good. Yeah. So, is my screen sharing visible?
No, it's not visible. Kindly.
Okay, great. Let me know. You should be able to see it now.
Yes, it's there.
Okay. So, thanks for a quick intro, and I will just elaborate on my own background. So basically, I am, have about 20 plus years experience. Started off with, as a child, was like most of the other kids, very playful, always, an outdoor person, ready to play any sport, far away from studies, or just manage to study as much as required, so that we can get enough score to pass, do well. I'm still a very outdoor person, very sporty. Do a lot of cycling currently. My current sport is cycling, and I do a lot of long distance cycling. I did my schooling from Springdale School, Dholapur. I'm not sure if most of you know, but if people who are born and brought up in Delhi probably know that. And that's where I, in class 12th, 11th, 12th, senior school, I taken commerce. Although when I passed 10th, I was given sciences, which is based on my scores. I was given PCM, and in a week or 10 days of being in the science section, I realized that I was not good enough, or I didn't like the subjects, and I thought I wouldn't do well there, and I took a conscious decision to move to the commerce, and so I think that was one important decision I taken at that time. And although I was being asked that science at that time, definitely I'm talking about way back in 1992. Okay, that science is the stream to go for, but I probably took the right decision to join the commerce stream. So one key takeaway that time for me was, and which I'm passing on to you, is that we need to choose the right subject, right? As per your own aptitude. So, a lot of times we do get swayed by what's happening around us, the environment, our peer pressure. Your own best friend might be a brilliant student and wants to pursue computer science or bio or whatever, and you might not have that aptitude, right? So you should choose a subject as per your aptitude. So that's important. Right after schooling, one aspiration I had as a child was to join the army, and maybe not sure how people think today in today's generation, but that time I think there was some craze to go into the army and apply for the NDA and all that, and I did, and I cleared the written exam and then the service selection board. I went to the Allahabad Center, which is supposed to be a rejection center, but I fortunately got selected. And right after the SSB, there are the medicals, and that's where I got rejected. I got a permanent rejection there, and this was because of color perception. And For all those 18 years of my life, I didn't know I had poor color perception. And it was not total color blindness, but it was more of a color perception thing, which they have a standard that, for the army, you need to have a minimum of CP3. I was CP4, and CP4 is not acceptable. So I was, uh, rejected. And it's a by birth defect in genes, congenial defect, and hence cannot be rectified. So I could not join the army. So my aspiration of joining the army ended then. I then, moved to hotel management, did hotel management, and that was more because one of my seniors from school and a friend who was in my same colony was very, enthusiastic about the hotel industry and used to talk that there's good scope of all that. And my dad got influenced and he said, yeah, that's a good industry. He thought that I would probably work in a smart organization like this guy in the picture and look smart and, always be presentable and speak to customers and, you're in the front office and, that's what most of the customers see when they go walk into a hotel. So that was my dad's impression. And that's the impression I got. And, I got through the hotel management examination and I ended up going to IHM Bangalore, Institute of Hotel Management Bangalore from 94 to 97. And again, there itself in the first year in college, I had a vision that I would probably want to be a chef and not like this smart guy here, but a chef. But in the second year, when I went for my industry training and worked with the Taj group, one of the Taj hotels in Delhi, I realized kitchen is not my cup of tea. And again, I decided that no, I would rather either join the services or the front office. And finally, at the end of the third year, in the campus, Taj group selected me in the F&B service, which is the services field, the restaurant service kind of a role. However, I was very keen to join the front office and they did not have a position. And I rejected that offer in Bangalore, and that was the position in Bangalore, one of the Bangalore hotels. And I rejected that position and came to Delhi and joined in a different stream altogether, the air catering division of Taj, and in Delhi, the Taj Air Caterers, and worked with them for about four and a half years. Again, one key learning for me was that, and practically speaking, right, the reality is quite different from what you vision. However, I do not discourage people from having vision. Even I have, and sort of I encourage all of you to have a vision, right? There has to be a dream. There needs to be some goal set in life, and there needs to be some vision which you should try and manifest in life. So that's important. So definitely, guys, all of you should definitely have a vision. And there is a idiom which says that you should aim for the sky and you'll at least land up on the treetops, right? So that's what we should do. Okay, and after Taj, there was a drastic change, and that's when the outsourcing industry was coming up, right? And I joined the GE. It was GE, Jekis, if whoever remembers it, whatever name, GE on the Fortune 500 companies had opened an outsource center in Delhi, in Gurgaon, and I had joined them in 2002. After about 4.5 years of working in Taj, I joined them again as an associate too, because there was an industry change. I had to start from a senior supervisor level. I came down to an associate level, a starting level again, because I was changing my industry. However, I think I took again a very right decision because there was not too much growth happening in Taj or that industry, the airline industry at that time. And this was a growing new wave in our country. There was a lot of work coming from the US and European countries, and hence there was a lot of opportunity of learning and growth. And this is where a lot of transformation happened in my own career, right? There was was supposed to be like a development center, right? Everybody who joined was given so much of training in communication, leadership, facilitation skills. And that's where even I got trained in quality in consulting, or the initial phase of quality, right? I got Lean Six Sigma trained, um, and this is where my real professional development started. I feel. Samarth, anything from you?
Oh, so not yet. So I think, yeah. So it was nice hearing about your journey. There is one student here, a viewer, who was requesting that could you also use a bit of Hindi?
Oh yeah, sure, Bilkul. I'll be
So
comfortable with this.
yeah. So yeah. So can we move to the next question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So why don't you tell us about consulting itself? What is consulting? There is a lot of confusion amongst people about this term. There are various kinds of terms used. Some call it process excellence, improvement, there are a host of other terms. So could you please help us uh, break this down?
Yeah, sure. Before I do that, I also want to talk about a little bit about why I got into this, right? And there are various ways of getting into this role. But I'll start about where I did. So when I was in GE Genpact, that's where GE was one of the pioneering companies which brought in Lean Six Sigma. It is one of the methodologies of using of consulting, right? Of problem solving basically, and they were the pioneers in trying to get this entire thing from manufacturing world into the services world, right? Manufacturing had been using Lean Six Sigma as a methodology for a few decades before that, right from 1970s and all that. But in 1990s, it was Jack Welch that time, who was the head of GE, who brought in the concept of Lean Six Sigma, and every employee was supposed to go through this training, and it was like a growth career enhancing opportunity. So I was fortunate to be there in that company that time. And that's where they talked about a lot about Lean and Six Sigma and continuous improvement, etc. And hence we were introduced to that methodology. So when I did that training, I did my green belt there, and then I did my black belt training also. वो करने के बाद I realized that ये एक लंबा career हो सकता है, right? And I was happy to do that. I moved out of Genpact in 2010, and then with the same role, right, I got so many other opportunities, and hence I joined EXL in a similar consulting black belt role. उसके बाद I joined HSBC Bank. So EXL was again an outsourcing company जहाँ पे मैंने insurance vertical और insurance के बारे में सीखा. So what I'm trying to tell you also is that this is one career which can fit into any industry. Okay. So in GE, I was supporting GE Healthcare, a manufacturing, a healthcare equipment manufacturing company. Okay. In EXL, it was insurance and then corporate quality, okay, where I was doing a lot of Six Sigma trainings, setting up training programs, running the training programs, certification of Six Sigma, and supporting corporate functions like HR and administration, etc. Then I moved to HSBC, which was totally a banking financial sector, right? So irrespective of, and very different, I never worked in finance, and this is banking finance, which is very different to regular finance. And I worked with HSBC again. I worked with DXL for 4.5 years, then worked with DXL HSBC for another 4 years, and again a very different domain. So, and then I moved to Novartis, which is my current organization in 2019. Now it's been almost 3 years, and which is again a very different industry. So what's important here is that this consultant role fits into any organization, okay, because it helps solve the business problems. Okay? And business problems are there in every business or every industry, every company. Okay? You don't have to be a finance guy to only be in quality. You can be a finance guy, insurance guy, or you could be none of these and still be part of that role. So that's the best part of it, and that's the hard part of it. But one thing for us to be successful in organizations is very simple. Communication skills and an attitude, a positive attitude, right, are the key to success. So how you communicate with your senior level and your people below you is very important. And do you carry a positive attitude, right? That is very important. So that is my key takeaway or giveaway to all of you here, that is important. Moving on, I will quickly talk about process excellence by showing you a quick 1 minute video here. And do let me know, Samarth, if the video is visible, the screen is visible.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, and hopefully the audio, there's no audio required here actually. So let me play this for a minute and then I'll come back to what is process excellence. Okay. So what is our learning here? What is the process? Could somebody want to just uh, type it out on the text or just come back and tell me what you saw in the video? What is the process? You can unmute and probably give me a response. Samarth, I can't see the text messages, so if you could just help me to respond.
So someone was asking why there was no audio. So, okay, yeah, we have one reply. All right, it's a question. It's a different question.
Okay, I'll answer the question, but anybody wants to respond, what is a process? And we saw that on the screen.
Okay, so there's nobody yet.
Okay. Fair. So process is basically where you have an input and then you have certain steps or a task and then you have an output. Okay. And that becomes a process. Right. So everything we do generally will have a process. Whether we call it a process or not, there needs to be a process around everything. Okay. Even for this discussion, Samarth would have had a process to set up where he identifies speakers like us, communicates with us, and then finally there are some steps to be done before we get into this discussion or this live session. Okay. And then there's going to be something in the end. The output is the live session here right now. And then the final outcome, the outcome could be some of you getting benefit out of this session, right? So there has to be a process around everything. Right? Even if it's a large manufacturing industry like a car manufacturing, there has to be a process. You know, something starts from the raw material being going inside a car manufacturing company, a chassis, and then all the wheels, the engine, the seat covers, the seats, etc., and everything is, you know, put on the supply chain and then put onto the chassis, and finally you have an output, which is the a final finished product, which is your car, which is sellable in the market. So there's an input, which is all the raw material, and then the process or the steps which are putting all those stuff onto the car chassis, and the final output is that final car, which is then sent to the market for selling. Right. So there is a process around everything. Now let's look at what is process excellence and why is it important, etc. So first thing is I just explained you with the video. Process you understood. Excellence is basically when you're trying to keep improving that, right? So that's excellence. Okay. Another term, and these are all the different terms available in the market. You would hear them a lot. Okay. They at the top level, they are the same. Okay. But different industries, different companies might name them differently. Okay. At different times in their careers, in your the life cycle of process excellence within the organization. They might call it consulting, they might call it process excellence, or they might call it anything else, and I'll show you those. So management consulting is basically when you're trying to solve some business problems, some of these consulting companies will call themselves management consultants, where they work with the management of the organization and help solve some larger management uh, issues. Okay. Then there's operational excellence. So that's more of day-to-day operational excellence, means any operational work, you're trying to bring in efficiencies in that operational work through, again, the same means of process excellence. Then there's another term called continuous improvement. Okay, it means what? It's a continuous cycle of improvement. So your day-to-day work, the same process steps, input is being improved, the process steps are being improved so that the output is improved. So there's a continuous improvement. Okay. And a good example here is there's always a continuous effort for any restaurant to keep improving their quality of food, their quality of service they're providing. Okay. Or if you look at any sports, okay, there's a continuous effort by a player or a sportsman to improve their scores. You know, if they're a 100-meter runner, if they're doing 100 meters in 10 seconds, they would want to do it in 9.8 seconds next time, or bring it down to 9.7 seconds, and then they'll try and figure out what they can improve in their day-to-day practice. Okay, that their overall results start improving. Right? So that's continuous improvement. Then is change management. So if you have to improve something, especially in an organization, right, it requires a lot of change which needs to happen. People need to accept that change. So suppose in your schools or colleges, CBSE, right, if they change, and they've done a lot of that blunder this year. Okay, I'm sure some of you are in the class who given their 12th boards this year. They've changed the pattern of the exam. They split the board exams into November and then June. A lot of change happened. It upset a lot of people. Okay. The course also got changed. It got shrunk to some extent. Okay. So all that is change. But whether that change is acceptable to the receiving party is also difficult. Accepting the change is a huge challenge. And if it does not get accepted, then the improvement will flop, right? It will not be accepted, and hence the impact will not be there. The benefits will not come out. And hence that change management comes into the picture. Okay. So you bring in a change, you say, okay, I want to improve this process. But if the person is actually working in that process does not want to accept it, then all that you've done goes waste, right? So that change management is also a process itself. There's a methodology of doing that. And then comes quality. Again, a very commonly used term. We say quality of our product is not good. Quality. I bought a T-shirt from Adidas, and I found the quality of that stuff is not good, right? So quality is a very commonly used term, right? And quality, definitely they say that beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, right? Similarly, quality lies in the sense of the person who's using that product, okay, or service, because something which is good for me might not be good for you, right? So that's why it becomes very difficult to measure quality. But every big brand will want to maintain a certain standard, and hence there is a lot of standardization done on the back end in terms of inputs, their processes, so that their outputs are very standardized. And hence people feel that, yes, if you buy a product like Apple, okay, then you know that quality is going to be top notch, right? But if you buy a phone from an Android phone from a different company, and I don't want to name companies here, but you are not sure whether it's going to be that good quality, right? And you're not paying too high also. So for quality, you tend to pay higher. And Apple is a good example here. Okay. So that is quality. And then re-engineering. Re-engineering is basically, when you re-engineer the entire process, step 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you say, can we remove some steps? Can we change the way we were working earlier? Think different, think out of the box. And the last is digital transformation. Again, a very common term today, okay, where we are digitalizing everything around us. Every manual step is being converted to digital. We have applications for everything on the phone nowadays. You don't have to walk into a bank for doing anything today, right? maybe 15 years back, maybe when most of you are kids, your parents were probably walking into a bank to withdraw money or deposit checks and all those things. Now everything is online. So everything is digitalized. Okay. So things have really moved forward, but there is still a lot of manual work. Trust me, a lot of manual work which happens on the back end in a lot of organizations. Okay. And I worked in some big brands, as you know now, right? There is still a lot of manual work happening, and there is a tremendous effort to convert, digitalize a lot of this, and that is all called digital transformation. Now, on this side of the arrow, the left arrow, is basically the different uh, ways of explaining what is process excellence, or terminology being used in the industry. Okay. On the right side of the arrow, I just want to talk about some of the methodologies for all these different names which you see on the left side, right? One is lean, right? Lean, as the English word lean means what? Slim, thin, somebody who's fit, right? Which means getting rid of waste. Okay. So lean comes from Toyota, from the east part of the world, Japan, right? And they are the ones who coined the name lean and brought it out. And it started off from Toyota Motor Company, and they look at very simple stuff, but how effectively they try and eliminate waste in their process so that their yields grow, okay, improve, and only value-added work is done, and not non-value-added work is removed. Then comes Six Sigma, another term very commonly used. And Six Sigma comes from the other side of the world, which is West, which is US. It came from Motorola. Okay, it's totally based on statistics. Statistics has been there forever. However, Bill Smith, one of the engineers in Motorola, a few decades back, put some of the statistics together and said we can use the Six Sigma methodology to improve our processes by reducing our defects. Okay, defects is your bad outputs, right? And reducing the variation in the process. Variation is what? Very simply, if you travel by Indian Railways versus Delhi Metro, and I'm assuming most of you have experienced the Delhi Metro, and Delhi Metro will be so accurate, right? It will be on the every station at the time which is designated time. It'll never be late, very rarely. So that is less variation. Whereas if you travel by Indian Railways, you don't ever know, you might be 1 hour late or 1 day late. Okay. And hence that is the variation. So that variation really hits the customer a lot more. Okay. So if you order food at home, pizza delivery, Domino's had this example of 30 minutes delivery earlier. That was their USP, unique selling proposition. And they said 30 minutes or we give it to you free. So you knew for sure that in 30 minutes, they will deliver. So that is an assurity that the customer has, and hence people will tend to order from Domino's and not from Pizza Hut or any other pizza outlet because of their unique opportunity or delivery of 30 minutes, right? So that's variation reduction. Moving on, the next is Agile. Agile is a new methodology, again, which talks about how fast we can do project management, right? So there is a project management, and then there is Agile project management, which is faster way of getting things done, running projects. Design thinking is a new age way of working or problem solving, basically, where the focus is primarily on customer. So even Lean Six Sigma, Agile, all focus on customer, but design thinking goes a step further where they do a lot of empathy mapping. They try and really understand from the customer's point of view, what is that they want, and then try and solve the problem from that end. Okay. Whereas in some of the other methodology, it could be that they do take customer feedback, but they are not going to that extent, and they look at from the supplier point of view also, or the production point of view also. Then comes robotic automation, which is again equal to digital transformation. Okay, robotics is a big thing now. It's going into every industry. Wherever your processes and your inputs are very standardized, you can put a robo. Okay, and these are not those physical robots doing the work, but this is just a robotic program which can do anything which is being done manually by somebody on a computer, right? So if the steps are very standardized and simplistic and repeatable, okay, and the inputs are also standardized, then a robo today is doing all that work. Okay. So that's happening in the industry. And then you have these higher end robotics or higher end automation which is happening using AI and ML and NLP, etc. Then comes TRIZ. TRIZ is a Russian methodology. Russia cannot be behind anybody, but it's a very old methodology which has a very standard set of problems and standard set of solutions for those problems. Okay. Okay, you have a standard set of problems which they have probably collected over years. That okay, these are broad. Suppose I'm just giving 10 type of problems. Okay, they have a list of that. Okay, and then there each of these problems will have those solutions against it. Now what they do is they will come to you and they'll say what is your problem, and they will match your problem to one of those 10 problems and say, okay, this is where your problem fits in, and this is the kind of category it is in, and what is the solution for that. So there's a standard solution to it, and from that standard solution they will make a bespoke solution. So that's TRIZ for you, very simply putting it. Obviously it's more complex than that, but just to explain. And it comes from Russia. Then comes total quality management. That's Edward Deming, who's the father of quality, and that's 13 principle point quality methodology which is followed in manufacturing world throughout. Okay, so TQM is a very common term in a manufacturing world. And finally, I put the last one is PMP there, project management methodology, which is again very common. It's not problem solving, but it is how to run projects. So all these are projects, right? So it's good that one needs to know what is problem solving. Okay, thank you. Any questions for that question on what is process excellence and why is it important? Now, my question to you guys, why is it important? Looking at all that I've talked about, anybody would want to say, why are we doing all this process excellence and change management, continuous improvement? What is the real benefit? And some of you will have to help me if somebody's answering on the chat,
Yes.
or somebody can unmute and please come forward and give a response. So, how many participants are there right now?
So on YouTube, we have about 12 concurrent viewers right now.
Okay, but YouTube will not be able to send a chat, right?
Yeah, they have the chat option.
Okay, and what about Zoom?
About 4 people here.
Okay. Fine. So, any thoughts on anybody? Why are we doing all this? Okay, I'll help you answer this. So eventually, why we really do that, or why companies want us to do that? First is customer satisfaction. Okay. So as I said, in Agile, design thinking, even Lean Six Sigma, everything is thought from the customer's perspective. So the customer is king. Okay. So that is why we want to do all that, so that we are able to give the customer a better service every time. The second is cost optimization. Okay. So a lot of times the companies are going through a very bad phase and they want to ensure that the costs are kept under control or cost reduction happens, right? And it's a very common project type. So a lot of times we would be asked to come in to help reduce costs, okay, for one of their functions or departments, etc. And hence that's where consultants are brought. Okay. And the third is any other value to the organization. So value to your organization, could be anything in terms of cost, in terms of actually employee satisfaction, also in terms of any other problems for within the organization. And ultimately, all that value to the organization converts into dollar value, right? Into monetary value. Even if it's cost curve optimization, there's a dollar value to it or a currency value to it. Even if it's customer satisfaction, why do you want the customer to be happy? Because then the person becomes a repeat customer and brings in more customers, right? So that's more revenue. So ultimately, anybody in business means they need to earn money. So the intent is definitely to the value to the customer, to the organization, right? In terms of dollars or in terms of money, in currency, right? You want to improve your profitability, right? So that's the ultimate intent of doing any of these process excellence kind of projects. Okay. Yes, Samad, over to you.
Right, sir. So we just have one more question. if you want to take it up now, you can take it up. So someone asked if, for consulting jobs, we're supposed to give an interview, a case study kind of interview. So how does one prepare for that? Are there any centers for that? And what is it all about?
See, I've definitely never prepared for an interview like that. In the sense, I've given interviews, but not prepared in terms of saying, oh, it's a consulting company interviews, I have to prepare differently. However, yes, there are quite a few videos available on YouTube which talk about some of these uh, consulting companies' sample interviews, right? Which are there in YouTube. So that's a good way to start and look at some of the sample questions which are asked. There are no organizations which prepare you. I have never seen that. Okay, मैंने कभी नहीं देखा है. तो organizations will help you with certifications. So that is there, and हम बात करेंगे उस बारे में. But preparing for interviews, that's as of now not happening. That's a new business opportunity, I think. But that doesn't happen. But you see a lot of YouTube videos are there which talk about some problem solving questions being asked and preparing and giving examples of that. So that is there. I hope that answers.
Yes, thank you, sir. So I think we'll move on to the next section of your presentation. So now, sir, would be telling us about the job roles and the opportunities that are actually available in this space.
Okay. So quality or process excellence, management consulting, whatever you see on the screen, there are different names. Every organization will have their own names. Okay. There are different paths, as I said initially, that different ways of getting into this kind of a role. One way is, how I got into it, right? I was an operations guy working in operations, but the company was really focused on Lean Six Sigma and continuous improvement, etc. And hence, they encouraged all of us to go through those trainings in the organization. Okay? And when I went through the Lean training, I loved the subject. I found this is good, and I had a natural intent or understanding of these things. And I thought this could be a good option. I continued supporting, doing some projects here and there of improvement, continuous improvement. And then slowly it led me to do a green belt project, and then so on and so forth, and finally become a black belt. So that is one path. And similarly, there could be other paths. Okay. So if you look at this slide, I've tried to show some of the paths available and and how to get through it. So if you look at the first row here, it says quality catalyst, green belt, black belt, master black belt, and champion. So that's the path which I had taken. Okay. So I was in GE and in operations, and that's when I got a lot of this trainings, which was on Lean and Six Sigma at a very basic level. I understood the concept, what is it? And then we were asked to come up with ideas of improving our processes, what we used to do day to day, day in, day out as operationally. So that becomes operational excellence also, okay? Or process excellence. We're trying to improve the process. So when I'm doing something daily, I am the one who knows what are my problems and I am the one who can solve for it, right? Using some of those concepts of Lean, Six Sigma, etc. So that's what I started doing. And I loved doing that. I enjoyed doing that. So then there was a quality circle kind of a concept where some of these people who were interested were brought in and there was discussions of idea generation, etc. So I became part of that as a QC. And though I was doing operationally my full-time role, this was just an extra initiative. Okay. Then after that, I was encouraged to go for a green belt training. When I became an assistant manager, I was encouraged to go for a green belt training. It was a 5 full day training, 40 hours of training. And then I went through that training, and then we were supposed to do a test. So I did a test, and then we were supposed to do a live project of improvement, of process improvement, right? And that project then I did, and that helped me get promoted to a manager also. Okay. And I did a project on that, showcasing the use of Lean Six Sigma methodology. So that's important. And making significant improvement in that specific area, that problem statement. Okay. From there, then there was a black belt becomes a role. So till quality catalyst in green belt, generally it's like operationally you're doing this as an extra initiative. But when you get into black belt, it becomes a full-time role, 8 hours of job. You're doing only black belt role, which means you will now start doing larger, more complex projects for the organization. First, second will be you will start mentoring green belt or quality catalyst projects and training them. Okay, that's where the role changes and becomes a full-time role, and you become a full-time consultant. So black belt is just a position again in the organization. You could be called a consultant, you could be called a black belt, or anybody else, right? Or a senior consultant, whatever, as per the organization. The next level is master black belt, where you go through another certification program, and I'm currently master black belt certified, and where you become a senior coach kind of person. You mentor black belt projects, you mentor green belt projects, you do much larger scale projects, or you coach a lot of other projects at one go. And then finally, a champion is basically does not mean could be a quality guy, but could be a business head kind of a person, where the person is supporting the improvements happening in his or her team. So that becomes a champion. So that's one stream, and I followed that stream. Okay. The other stream is the quality control analyst. So these are the guys who do the QC audits. Okay, the quality audits. If there are transactions happening, or let me give you a manufacturing example. Maybe all of you will be able to imagine that better. Suppose the iPhone is being manufactured. Somebody, either a robotic arm or physically a person, will probably check whether everything is working on the phone before it is sent out to the market, right? So that's a quality audit. Physically, not every piece, probably out of 10, one piece they will pick up randomly and they will do a check, right? That if the quality is good or not. So that's called quality catalyst or quality analyst. This guy is trained, and he or she will audit that product or that service on certain parameters. Okay, and that's called quality analyst role. Okay, or quality control. Then from there you grow and you become a supervisor, and then finally it again ends up being a black belt role, because it's a similar quality improvement. Because if you find errors and accuracy is an issue, then one needs to also do Six Sigma projects to solve for those issues, right? If my defect rate is pretty high today, okay, suppose if iPhone is manufacturing 100 phones and they find 2 phones defective, it's a loss to the organization, right? So they need to make sure that 2% accuracy or defect rate or defective rate basically needs to go down. Hence, it is important that projects are done to find the root causes and improve. And that's where the black belt comes in again. So that role also goes up to the same stream. The starting point could be more from a quality control rather than a quality catalyst. Okay. Does that make sense? Any thoughts, any questions on this slide?
No, sir. So we do have some queries here. And essentially what they're asking is what kind of an educational background one must have to get into consulting. So we know that companies come and hire a lot of people, but which course is preferred and so on.
Okay, no, great question. So अभी तक मैंने अपना background share कर दिया. I just did schooling in commerce, hotel management, and I also did my BCom in correspondence simultaneous. That's not important. Okay, did not get me anything here. Okay, and I was just working like an operations guy in Taj, and then an operations guy in GE, and then got into where I am as a consultant. So there is no specific educational background required to get into this stream. Okay, so most of the black belts like me or master black belts like me are people who have a very generic. They might be science students, they could be commerce students, they could be art students or humanities students, etc. And if they're working in operations, they're working in any operations or any industry, even in manufacturing, you could move into this role. Okay, if you're in manufacturing, you could be an engineer. That's why you're in manufacturing, right? So you've done some engineering roles, and then slowly from there you convert into a black belt or a quality catalyst or a kind of a person. Okay. If you're in a service industry, then again, आपको कोई specific certification आप कर सकते हो within the organization, But to get into a black belt role directly, you don't really need any specific qualification. Okay. These kind of courses, green belt, black belt, can be done by organizations, and I'll show you my next screen. Okay. So these are some of the, there are thousands of institutes, right? There are some of the few ones which are more well known. Simply Learn, Indian Statistical Institute, which is a government organization, Henry Harvin, KPMG, ASQ, AIG, where you can go and do these green belt certification courses or a black belt course. Okay. It might help you to get into a role, but what happens is in all these organizations, the challenge I've seen, because I've hired a lot of these people, is that you don't have a practical exposure of doing a project, a live project. Okay. You go to ASQ, you give them the money for a green belt training, they'll say, okay, thank you. They will have somebody like me come and train the group, okay, for 4 or 5 days. And they will give you some dummy data, do some statistical analysis so that you learn a little bit of statistics also. But you don't have the exposure of doing a practical project. They'll give you some data, you will put that in the project format and you can do a dummy project. Fine. But that's very different to doing a real problem solving and change management in an organization, right? So when you go into a hiring stage, when you're on the other side of the table, you're hiring. So if I'm hiring a person who's come from ASQ, I'll say, yes, good. You have good theoretical knowledge. You can give me all the statistical gyan. But when it works, when you come onto the organization, practically working with a challenging situation where the customer says, I don't agree to all your stats. My problem is some soft problem, right? People issue. How will you solve all that? Stats will not solve that, right? So that's where a lot of practical exposure is also required. So it is not necessary that you go through one of these courses to get a job. Okay. You get a job and then try channelize your career within the organization by going through these courses, either externally or internally. Also, a lot of organizations have these kind of trainings internally. Okay, where you don't have to spend money also. Okay. If you go externally, yes, you have to spend money. Okay. Get a certificate and try and apply for a job. And I'm not saying you'll not get through, you might be able to get through. People do that. But the best way is you get into an organization, then start growing your career in this direction, if that interests you. Okay. And then you do a training within the organization, certification within the organization, and then keep going. Okay. That's the path I have taken. Okay. So that's my suggested way. But there are a lot of institutes which give that training. I hope I've been able to answer.
Right, sir. Also, one more query here, interesting query. Could you elaborate a bit more about design thinking role in consultancy?
Yes.
What would be the career path for it?
Yeah. So again, design thinking is just a methodology. It's not a role separately.
Right.
Okay. All these which I gave you here on the right side are different methodologies of process improvement or process excellence. Okay. So they are not different roles.
Right.
Okay. Even I do design thinking, I do agile. These are just different tools. It's like I have a toolkit. I have to solve a problem. मेरी मशीन खराब हो गई, मेरे कार खराब हो गई है. तो मेरे पास एक टूल किट है. मैं देखूंगा कार में क्या प्रॉब्लम है. अगर स्पैनर की जरूरत है स्पैनर यूज करूंगा, स्क्रू ड्राइवर की जरूरत है तो स्क्रू ड्राइवर यूज करूंगा, वोल्ट मीटर की जरूरत है तो वोल्ट मीटर यूज करूंगा. राइट. तो ये सारे डिफरेंट टूल्स हैं उस प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए. ओके. So design thinking is not a career in itself. It's just one of the tools or methodologies which you learn and then you use them while solving a problem. Does that answer?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, not yet.
Okay. So this slide looks very busy. I'm not sure आप लोग पढ़ पा रहे हैं कि नहीं. But here is the consulting part of it. So earlier I talked about quality, Six Sigma, black belt role and all that. The other way of getting into consulting is some of these top consulting companies. What I'm trying to show here is on the left side are some of the names of some top consulting companies. McKinsey, BCG, Bain & Company, KPMG, Deloitte, and Accenture, etc. And on the top are the different levels of people who are entering. Either you're an intern level, undergrad level, MBA entry, or manager level or partner level, right? So and then this is the line which shows the number of years of experience, right? So this just shows that most of these companies hire people at undergrad level also. Some of them hire at intern level also with less than 1 year experience, right? And then from 1 to 3 years, they're hiring business analysts or associate. They might call them from different names, doesn't matter. But these are people who can get into the organization even at an intern or an undergrad level in a consulting department. Okay. Or you get in after doing an MBA, and an MBA means you've done a simple graduation. You might have some work experience and come back and do a full-time MBA in finance, suppose, or in marketing, or some other domain, or HR. And then one of these companies like Bain and Company comes in. You are in one of these top IMs, right? So then a big consulting company like McKinsey or Bain will come, and you get hired as a consultant. So you will probably start at an engagement manager, depending on how much experience or work experience do you have in the past before your MBA. You might join at an associate level or an engagement manager level. Okay. Again, you might not have too much of industry experience here, but what you have is a lot of market knowledge, because a lot of, that's what MBA does to you. It gives you a lot of exposure of various industries. And a lot of those professors are pretty experienced which come and give you that in knowledge, right? You might not be a Six Sigma expert at that stage. You might not have studied Six Sigma and Lean, or maybe in some MBA courses, I've heard that they do talk about Lean Six Sigma now, and that is one of the subjects to some extent, right? But you do have understanding of what's happening in the market. Okay, industry. What is the industry talking about? And that helps you face the customer, go in front of the customer and present things. Or you could be part of the back-end team. So there's a lot of research which happens. So if there's a consultant who faces on the front end with the customer, there's a back-end team which is supporting that consultant, which does a lot of market research and research of the industry and gives it to the consultant to present to the customer. Okay, so there's a back-end team and then there's a front-end team. Okay, that's how most of the consulting companies work. They work as teams. Okay, so there's a project in cement industry. Okay, so what will happen is there'll be some guys. They'll form a team. There'll be two guys who probably do a front end, and they're smart guys, good in communication skills, good in presentation, very presentable, have a good flair with the customer. But they might not be the cement industry experts. Okay, they might not have the best experience in the cement industry, but they have passed out from IIM or whatever, and they are smart guys. They are put on the front end, but they have a separate team of a few people on the back end, and one of them could be a cement industry expert. Okay, who will pull out the data and present the information to these guys, and they will then further present it to their customers. Okay, and the customer will say, "Oh, I want to improve this part in my cement." Maybe it could be very technical in manufacturing quality, or it could be like a logistics. I've done a project on logistics cost reduction in a cement factory. Okay, so I am not a logistics expert, neither am I a cement factory, a cement manufacturing expert, but I was sent in as a consultant. Okay, so we had a team which is supporting. We've all worked together to find out more about cement and all those things, and where are the logistics costs going. Looked at their data and tried to solve that problem. Okay, so that's how the other stream is. Okay. So when you join one of these companies, they might also train you on Lean Six Sigma, Agile, design thinking, etc. Because these are just the methodologies of problem solving. Okay. So one way of getting through is you join an organization and you do their green belt course or a black belt course internally. The other way is you do it from one of these companies like which ones, KPMG or ISI or Simply Learn, ASQ, wherever, and that could help you get into a company in a consulting role. Or the other way is if you've done MBA or as an intern, you can apply in one of these consulting companies. You're very keen, you can directly apply into the consulting companies for a consultant role. And depending on your experience, qualifications, etc., they might hire you at various levels of the organization. Does that give you a slight understanding of how the industry is running and what are the job roles available?
Yes, absolutely. Also, one more question here. There's a student who's asking, do these organizations consider online or distance learning MBA? Let's say
it's a very company specific question. Okay, distance learning and online is always not the most preferred mode. Online today in the world of pandemic, yeah, even I might be doing a lot of online stuff, right? But if it's distance learning, the value we all understand, right? If you do your MBA from a grade A college like an IM or FMS, etc., then there's more market value. And if you do it from an IGNU or SIMBI, then obviously there is less market value, right? We all understand that. So if you're going to a McKinsey, they will not even consider a person other than IM, right? Or if you have grown and you have around 5-10 years of experience and you've done really well in your current organization, and then you apply for McKinsey and you have that industry knowledge, they might pick you as an industry expert. Okay. So suppose you are in a cement industry. No, I don't want to go take. I talked about cement. Let me talk about computers. Okay. You worked in Dell for about 10 years. Okay. And Dell manufacturing, etc. And you looked at Dell's manufacturing as an engineer for 10 years and have good experience. Now, suddenly McKinsey needs somebody who's an expert in computers, manufacturing of computers, okay? And hence in their consulting department, because they are getting a lot of consulting assignments from Dell, Lenovo, and all these. And they need somebody who has got that kind of experience. So then they will probably float out a role position in the market, and you may want to apply for it. Okay, you have no consulting background. You have been working on the back end throughout, but you have very sound knowledge of computers and how their manufacturing is done. Okay, you can apply. You could be part of, not of the front end consulting, but you can be part of the back end. And then once you join, then again the world is open to you. If you're good in presentation and good in customer handling, customer dealing, you might be sent on the front end also. Again, that is very, very person specific. I cannot give you a very generic answer, but hope that helps.
Yes, sir. So there was someone here also asking about the traits or the skills that are required for consultants.
Yes. Okay, great. That's a very good question, and I will take us to the next slide here. And these are just a few. I quickly put them together. Okay, it doesn't mean these are all of them. Generally, very broadly speaking, there are soft skills and there are hard skills, right? Or technical skills. Technical skills could be like I talked about, this computer guy or a cement industry or your car manufacturing, or you have a supply chain exposure, or you have a finance guy. These are more technical stuff, right? Where you have worked in that industry in operations and you know the in and out of that industry, okay, or that function. And now you go in and consult as an expert. The other is the soft skill part of it also, where you need to be really good in presentation skills, even making PowerPoint slides. One needs to be smart in making smart, good-looking presentations, PowerPoint slides in time. Okay, so sometimes a lot of these companies hire people who are experts in PowerPoint slides. So as every person might not be very good in making these slides, ना इतनी सुंदर slides बनाना हर एक की बस की नहीं है. तो आप क्या करते हैं कि आप कंपनीज हायर करती हैं जो बंदे डिजाइनर्स होते हैं, जो पावरपॉइंट स्लाइड बनाते हैं. तो इफ आई एम नॉट गुड, मैं वो एक अपना कंटेंट डाल के भेज दूंगा उस बंदे को, and then that person will make it look like a nice looking slide, and then that will be sent to the customer. Okay, so all that also happens, but presentation skills is important. So some of these skills are problem solving, right? I'll not go through everything in detail. If somebody's got any specific question on any one of them, I can talk about it, but I'll just mention one or two here. In the meanwhile, if you have any specific questions on this, please do ask. So problem solving comes natural, right? You can learn through it. There are ways of doing it. Again, there are tools in our Lean Six Sigma toolkit of problem solving. Okay, but one needs to have that aptitude also to deep dive and be curious to ask the right questions from the person, right? From the customer. Okay. Suppose one restaurant approaches that we need help. We are losing revenue. Okay. My revenues are going down. Please help me. Okay. So then this guy, the consultant who approaches the restaurant manager or the owner of the restaurant, will ask a lot of questions to understand the scenario, right? So that will help them solve the problem. You need to really deep dive and ask a lot of questions and get some data also to help you, understand the root cause. So that's problem solving. Something other is facilitation skills. It's again a soft skill. Okay. What is facilitation? Right now, Samarth is facilitating this session. Okay. So there needs to be you might be in a meeting room with 5 or 6 very senior people in the organization, customer side. There could become some people in your organization also sitting with you. And they could be experts in their domains. And you are not the expert. How do you facilitate? You need to have a clear objective of the meeting. You need to make sure by the end of that 1 hour of meeting, you are able to achieve something and come out with actionables. So that is facilitation. So it is important that you keep people in the momentum and make sure the objectives of that meeting are coming out, right? And are achieved. So that is facilitation. It is very important because there could be people with a lot of egos, people who are not talking at all, people who are talking too much and talking loud, all sorts of people. And it's a physically challenging situation. So one needs to be smart enough to keep the conversation on track and making sure that the objectives are met. And that's why the facilitation skill becomes a very, and it's again something which comes naturally to some people, and some people have to hone that skill, practice it, and over the years with experience you learn. Networking and influencing is another important thing, right? To get business, as you grow up in the chain and you become a partner and a MBB or a champion, you need to start networking to get more projects from your customers, right? So that networking is important. Influencing is when you have to influence them for change management, accepting the change. If you're saying, okay, I will automate this process, we'll put a macro or we'll put one technical solution here. People will say, no, we are used to this old style of manual paperwork. I like that. I've been doing that for 20 years. I don't know how to use a computer. Then what do you do? So one needs to be having that influencing skills to influence and tell them what are the benefits of doing that. How that help the organization? What is the value for the organization and that employee? Okay, so you have to play very smart. And all that comes with experience. Okay, might not happen on day one. Okay. Anybody else wants to talk to me, ask me about any of the other skills? There are lots of skills, right?
So
technically, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So yes, there's someone who wants you to elaborate on managing oneself.
Okay, great. So managing oneself, what anybody wants to take an attempt on that? What does that really mean, managing oneself? Okay, let me try and explain. So managing oneself means, see what happens in consulting is, though you work in teams, but sometimes you are all, and sometimes most of the time you are the only one sitting in front of the customer. It's an IC role, individual contributor role. Okay, there's no 5 people working for you and doing things for you, and you're sitting like a manager. Okay, it's always an IC role. Each one is individually working in their own capacity. And hence, it is important that you manage your own self in all the aspects, from how you present yourself, because it's like a customer facing role, especially when you're customer facing. Okay. So you need to be dressed up also nicely. Okay. You need to have good communication skills. As I said, networking, influencing skills, etc. You need to be make sure that you are on time, before time, and time management. You need to make sure that you understand the office challenges or the customer level challenges, right? So one needs to be adept with that, also have that kind of understanding. So it's all self-managed. So nobody will come and tell you that. Okay. So a lot of these skills we need to develop. Yes, when you talk to your peers or your seniors, they will give you guidance. I'm not saying they will leave you and tell you that do everything yourself. That will also happen. But these are generally roles which are individual contributor roles, and hence that managing oneself becomes important because you are not hidden, you are exposed all the time. Okay, do you understand? When you are exposed means you are in front of the customer. So it's not that मेरा boss मेरे को बचा लेगा, ठीक है? अगर हम ऑफिस में काम कर रहे हैं, बैकएंड पे कहीं पे कुछ नहीं, अपनी टीम में काम कर रहे हैं, हमने कोई गलती करी, अरे कोई बात नहीं यार, कोई बात चलता है, ठीक है? और आप कस्टमर के सामने हो तो कई बार वो गलती बहुत महंगी पड़ सकती है, right? So managing oneself becomes very, very critical. You are representing the company, your consulting company, in front of your customer. So you are the image. Okay. So that is why it's like that. So like I gave you the example of hotel environment, and I saw that I showed you the picture of the guy standing smartly in the front office reception. So that guy is standing and a customer comes. He's the one who's representing the company to you, the hotel in front of you. So if that guy is shabbily dressed or does not listen to what you're saying as a customer, then what is the impression you will take away for that hotel? Bad, right? So that's what it is in consulting. You are on the front end with the customer and you're representing your organization. Okay. So that's why managing oneself is important. Was I able to explain?
Sorry. Yes, you were able to explain.
Any other questions on this slide? And we can talk about it for hours. There could be 1,000 different skills. Technical skills I'm not going into because every domain will have their own technical knowledge. Okay. So the soft skills is the aspect which is something which we need to hone, practice, learn with experience. Some of us could be natural in some things, which is fine. That's a boon. Some of us need to learn.
All right. So I think we can now move on to the final section, which is about what are the rewards and challenges of getting into consulting.
Yeah, that's my next slide. So I'm trying to show a balance here, right? On both sides. I'm not trying to say that there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons, a lot of challenges and a lot of rewards. Okay. Why I'm saying that is a reward for one person could be a challenge for the other person. It could be confusing. And I'll take a very simple example of travel. Now, if I'm a 21-year-old, like some of you might be in this room, I would love to travel the world. अरे मुझे फ्री में कोई स्विट्जरलैंड भेज दे या यूएस भेज दे, मैं खुशी खुशी जाऊंगा. यार मुझे 6 महीने के लिए भेज दे, यार 1 साल के लिए भेज दे, मैं बड़ा खुश होकर जाऊंगा कि कोई रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है, मुझे मजे से वहां पे जिंदगी जीऊंगा, यूएस की लाइफ देखूंगा या यूरोप की लाइफ देखूंगा, व्हाटएवर, राइट? बट वही अगर आप मेरी एज पे, आई एम 46, shouldn't be disclosing my age, but and you have a family and all those things, and and you might have some health issues or whatever, and you can't eat out in a hotel every day, right? So then that becomes a challenge. So traveling 15 days in a month becomes a challenge. So that's why I have not segregated and saying these are the rewards and these are the challenges. Okay, I've tried to put all of them together, and we'll go through them. But for some, it could be a reward. For some, it could be a challenge. Okay. Now, the first one, client-oriented, right? So if you have great communication skills and you're presentable and you love talking to people, maybe that's a reward for you. But for others, it could become a challenge because if you think, अरे यार मेरे को इंग्लिश नहीं आती, मैं कैसे बात करूंगा अमेरिकन से, right? या I'm not confident, then it could be a challenge for you. But you can develop those things. It's not that you cannot develop. And once you develop, you might make that a reward for you. Okay. But some people love to talk to people. They are chatterboxes or they are very smart, talk naturally. Hence, for them, it is a reward. They love talking to people, meeting new people, traveling, and they might get a lot of opportunity. Like learning of various industries. Okay. Now here, why I put that here is because as a consultant, you could be not just an expert in one industry, especially somebody who's come from my kind of background. If I'm a finance guy and I've done CA and then I do consulting, then I will do only consulting in finance world, right? So I'm restricted to only that. But if I come from a generic background, okay, then I might be put as a black belt into any industry. Okay, so as I said, I've done customer service, I've done healthcare, I've done insurance, I've done banking, finance, I've done HR projects, I've done logistics projects, I've done security, physical security projects. Okay, and I'm probably forgetting a few. Okay, so there are a lot of different kind of projects one can do, right? So that is the diverse knowledge of the various industries you might have. Maybe not in depth, but a basic understanding. Diverse knowledge, again with diverse teams. Now you are working in global companies, so you will have diverse teams, people sitting in Prague, people sitting in Switzerland, in US, in Australia, various parts. And you will be working with them with all different kind of people and different age groups, different kind of genders. So there's a lot of diversity. In consulting, there's a lot of diversity. Office politics. Now that's interesting. Okay. Now very simply put, when you're working in whether the project is internal to an organization or external to an organization, there will be somebody who's your sponsor who's paying for you. Okay. And he's the person who's got this company in as a consultant to help solve a problem. Now, this guy will say, or this person will say, will have some vision and some priorities. Now, when you meet some of the other key stakeholders in that while doing the project, there will be some big heavyweights on the other side also who will say, uh, you know, the solution should be not X, it should be Y. Okay. Whereas this first guy who's your sponsor will say, no, the solution should be X. Okay. So there's an X and a Y, two different solutions and two different big heavyweights in the organization. They have their own agendas in life. They have their own backgrounds. And the consultant is right in the middle trying to understand which direction to take. And there's no right and wrong. You might think X is the right solution. But the Y guy, the guy who says Y, he might have very strong reasons why he wants the Y solution to be chosen. Right. And hence it becomes a lot of tug of war within the office, within the customer side. It could happen in your own organization also. Okay. So that's a very practical situation which one will face as a consultant in any project. There will be always conflicting situations in every project you face. Because each department function might have their own viewpoints and may have their own pros and cons, and hence they might say, no, this is right, the other will say this is right. Okay. And hence it becomes a very diplomatic thing to work on. Leading without authority. That's interesting again. What happens? You are called in as a consultant, and you are talking to somebody who's working in that domain for 20 years or 10 years. And now you come and tell them, oh, you are not doing it correctly. That guy will say, bullshit, bakwas. Tu kaun hai? Right? Tu kaun hai mujhe batane wala, kal ka aaya aur chhota. That's how they say. Okay? And that's where the change management works. That's where that resistance will happen and you'll have to overcome that resistance. So आप उनको बता रहे हो कि भाई, this is the right way of doing it. It will improve your efficiency, reduce your defects, and your turnaround time will reduce. Okay? They'll say, no, we'll not accept. So leading without authority again happens in a lot of projects where you have to go and talk to the expert, tell him, you've been doing this work like this, but this is a better way of doing it. Eliminate these non-value adding activities, your process will improve. And that's becomes a challenging situation. Career development, definitely a lot of scope. Okay. Again, if you can fit into any industry, then you have a scope to move from one industry to the other. Travel, I already talked about. Resistance to change, mentioned in every area, right? There will be a resistance to change. Any solution you put forward, some people will say this is good, some people will say this is bad, some people will say this is great. Okay. And if there are more people who are saying bad and not acceptable, then the acceptance will become a problem, and hence the implementation of the solution will become a problem. Okay. And which means the project is a flop. Okay. So that's why resistance to change is also a challenge. Top down and bottom up again. When you are brought into the organization as a consultant by the top management, right? They are the ones who are sponsors, right? They are the ones who are paying for it. So they have their own vision, they have their own ideas. But when you go and work on a project, you will go down to the lowest level and talk to those people and understand the problem. They have their own challenges and their own vision or solutions, which will not match with the top management's viewpoint. And again, you are in the middle, sandwiched. Okay. So that becomes a big problem. So that's where a person with the consulting thing needs to be really smart. Okay. And really needs to play a lot of, role play with the different levels, trying to understand and trying to show a positive thing to each one of them. And work through the maze of all these challenges to come out with a solution. So again, the vision could be very different to the real outcome. Okay. You might vision that I'll change the world overnight by doing this, but it really doesn't work like that. Okay. Cost center and revenue center. Yeah. Now revenue center is when you are being built. Okay. So consultants come out very costly. So a consultant McKinsey will be very expensive. Don't ask me what is the cost. Okay. I will not give you that answer. And I might not have the right figures also. and revenue. So there'll be a per hour charge to it. So very expensive. Okay. And each consulting company will have their own rules. So then they become a revenue center. So they're generating revenue for the organization. But sometimes, like in Novartis, I am an internal consultant. Okay. I am not going out and consulting for other companies. In that case, we are a cost center. Then the company is paying me money. I am doing some ROI, some return on investment, but I am not getting paid for it. I mean, in the sense, my department is not charging anybody. Or if there is a charge, it's an internal charge. Left hand giving to the right hand. Okay. So, but that's just a book of account entry. Okay. And this guy is paying us for this work. Instead of paying outside the organization to an external consultant, they're paying to internal person. But it's just within the organization. So it's like a cost center. Okay. So that's a cost center and a revenue center. Any thoughts, questions around this? We've gone well beyond 1 hour. I guess not. I'll just quickly move on. So these are some of the top consulting firms. Some of you would have seen or heard about them. You may want to research. If you're looking for a jobs, then maybe go on to these Naukri sites and search by these organizations. Or if you're still studying, then it's a good idea for you to do a little bit of research about these companies. What kind of profiles do they hire? What do they really ask in the interviews? Maybe you get some videos, as I said earlier, on how to prepare for these interviews if you want to apply in the future. Okay. And how big are these companies? What kind of consulting projects do they do? There could be some case studies of these consulting projects available. I could have shown you a few, but that would have become a very lengthy thing. So I'm not showing you any project per se, because that becomes very specific to that problem, and all of you might not understand it. These are some of the projects where I could recall what I've done in the last few years. So there are different kind of projects. Cycle time reduction, the time it takes to finish one cycle of that process or product. Okay, where we did hiring an employee exit, the time it takes to hire an employee in an organization, the time it takes to exit an employee in an organization. Okay, fitment of a new floor in a building. Okay, so this was like my first project in Genpact when I became a black belt, and they were coming up a new building in Silokhara in Gurgaon, and they wanted us to do a project to reduce the time it takes to set up a new building. Okay, where they take an outer shell from DLF. Okay, and they say, okay, now Genpact will create their own floor there with their own Genpact branding and everything. So it takes 6 months or whatever. So they wanted me to reduce it by X time, right? So that's the kind of projects we've done. Productivity improvement is how productive your employees are. So transactional accuracy means if you're doing a transaction, how accurately you're doing a transaction. If you're doing a lot of rework, you're wasting your time there. Okay. If you make errors and those errors are caught by QC, the quality auditors, it needs to go back for rework, right? Rework means more time. It's a defect. It's a problem. It's non-lean, and hence more time goes in. FT is full-time employee. So the efficiency of these full-time employees need to be improved by finding faster ways of working. Wherever they're wasting their time, you do your time and motion study for every FT and say, where are they wasting their time and not doing anything productive? And you cut down on those things to make them more productive. Customer satisfaction projects, a lot of them, right? Downtime reduction of healthcare equipment. So the healthcare equipment here could be your X-ray machines, the CT or the MR machines in hospitals in the US, right? That was my first process in GE. And we did projects to see how the uptime of those machines could be. And it was not a technical thing that we were not technically solving them, but how the communication happened from the hospital, the moment the machine was down, how the communication was happening to the backend engineering team, how fast they are responding and solving the problem. So we were looking at that part of it, not the technical aspect. Similar improvement in UK visa application process. So UK VAC, the UK Visa Application Center in Delhi. So I did a project there to improve their customers. Which means people like us who apply for a UK visa, when we walk into their visa application center, which was used to be in Nehru Place earlier, and how the experience is, how fast a person can come in, do the biometrics, do all the paperwork and go out. Okay, so that was the experience which we worked on. Okay, how that can be. And again, this is a project I did 10 years back. Cost reduction, logistics cost reduction. So that's the project I was mentioning in a cement factory. It was actually a multi-product company. They make not just cement, they make a lot of other stuff. And they wanted us to do a logistics cost reduction project. Fitment cost for a new floor, that's similar to the same other project. One was cycle time. The same project had other outcome of the cost of the fitment was also reduced. Effort reduction, any kind of effort, there are a lot of effort reduction projects we do. Okay? Which lead to uh, reduction in cost. Okay, so these are some of the kind of projects I've done, and these are projects where I've been involved. That's why I put them. But on the net, you will find 1,000 different kind of projects available, which all these consulting companies post. So that's all I have to share. Any questions now? We can probably do a Q&A session if there are more questions.
Nice. So a note to all our viewers, I have pasted the useful links, all the useful links that Shar shared with us. So I put it all in the chat, so you can look that up in your free time. And if there are any questions, please let us know. We're here. Okay, so
hello, Mr. Ashish. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, it's a very general question, about office politics. So that is a very different thing. So how do you suggest, with your experience, how should one I think all the people who pull others down must be having some similar characteristics. So how should one behave, because people say you behave like a family, you are a team. But I think when you behave like a family, then you become informal, and that creates shall one remain formal or informal, so that to avoid office politics? What does you say from your own experience?
When I put office politics there in that slide, it was more to do from our professional behavior in front of the customer. So when I say office politics, means when you're at the customer's office or customer's client side. Okay, I know where you are working, there will be some politics happening there also. Within your own consulting team, there could be those kind of politics. I don't want to comment on that part, because I want to focus only on the skills of a consultant. Okay, so when you are in the client side, okay, traveling to a client side, and you are representing your organization there, you need to be self-managed, which I mentioned, and you need to be aware of that office politics in their organization. And how will you be aware? When you talk and do interviews with your stakeholder. Stakeholder is the person you work with in your. So when you go to a client side, they'll say, okay, this guy is the sponsor. Sponsor is the person who's paying for the project to your company. Then that guy will tell you, okay, this guy is the head of this department. Okay, you go and meet him. He will give you the problem. Then that guy will tell me, okay, go and meet he will give you half an hour from his busy schedule. He will say, okay, now go, that head of department will say, go meet my manager there. He will give you more information. Okay, when you go and meet the manager, he will give you another 2 people to meet who will give you data. Okay, and give you more breakdown in that area. Now you met 5, 6 different people. Now suddenly they'll say, okay, you're doing this. Now you go and meet a different department head. Okay, now that department head gives you a totally different picture of the situation, of the problem. The same problem has different perspective to it. Now, the sponsor side, which you meet first, has given you some impression. Okay, but now you go and meet somebody else who will give you from a different perspective altogether. Suddenly you will feel, oh, there's a different angle to the entire situation.
And that could be the problem. And that could be the reason for whatever is the problem.
Okay. And I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, again, Samat, I'm sorry, this might get extended. Okay, but all those who are hanging on for this, thanks for being there. Now, in one of the organizations where, okay, I'll talk about the logistics project since I mentioned that. In the logistics projects, they were spending about 30 crores on their inbound and outbound logistics, and they're a manufacturing company. Okay, they manufacture from sugar to windows to cement to polymers, and there were 3-4 different, there were about 8 works products they used to produce. And they wanted us to reduce in all those product lines, they wanted us to reduce their inbound logistic cost and outbound logistics. So the raw material logistics cost and the finished product logistics. Okay. And just imagine sugar is very different to cement. Okay. Cement is a very high-tech industry. Okay. All automated in Kota and wherever, right? And sugar is a sugar mill somewhere in the midst of UP ke gaon.
Right.
Okay, and UP is a dangerous place to be, especially in the sugar area. In all the farms, आप रात को वहाँ पे 8 बजे के बाद निकल नहीं सकते बाहर.
Absolutely.
And we had gone there. Okay, if some of you would have probably experienced it if you're part from that part of the world. Okay, so it's a high risk area. So आपको escort गाड़ी आपको station छोड़ती थी, escort गाड़ी आपको station से वापस लेके आती थी, and you know those kind of things. So I've seen all those. Now you have to reduce the cost. Now if you tell them कि आप tractors की जगह trucks ले आओ, what happens to all those tractor owners? ठीक है, जो आपके लिए काम कर रहे हैं, जिनको आपने आउटसोर्स किया है अपना ट्रैक्टर में गन्ना लेके आने के लिए, सडनली देयर विल बी अ इशू. वो अगले दिन वो गला काट देंगे मैनेजर का चुपचाप. So it is that dangerous. You sitting in an AC office can make all the plans in the world. कि US में एक प्रोजेक्ट हुआ था, उन्होंने वहां पे ये करके वो कर दिया, आपने वो करा, right? But that's where these kind of issues happen. So one boss will say, sitting in an AC office in Delhi, or the same company will say, you know, अरे यार वहां पे heavy duty trucks लगाए थे, उसको कुछ नहीं पता ग्राउंड में क्या हो रहा है. जो ग्राउंड में मैनेजर बैठा, जनरल मैनेजर, वो कहेगा भैया कल मेरे को मार दिया जाएगा अगर मैंने ट्रैक्टर हटा दिया था. So those are kind of practical issues come when you really work on the ground. Okay, so
I completely agree. I agree. I know sugar mills in UP.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I completely agree with you. You know, ground realities are very different. They are very practical, local, cultural issues which you have to handle wherever your factory is. Right. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So no questions yet. Do we have any questions? So we'll be ending the session now. We're reached an end. And thank you so much, sir, for the insights and really helpful for our students. And I'm sure we must have been able to address all queries. And in case you have any more queries, I have put our details here, email and phone number. You can contact us for any personalized career guidance support that you may require. So thank you and have a nice evening.